being in the position of directing, it was just questions all day. Decision. And I was so impressed with the team, and I came into that job just as straightforward as I possibly could.
Hi, and welcome to Kendal Mountain Festival for our YouTube channel. I'm Steve Scott. I'm here with a good friend, Kate Burrell, who's come over from Canada.
Yes.
And first of all, welcome. Thanks so much for coming over, flying back over the pond. When was the last time you were here?
Last time I was here, and thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Last time I was here was 2019. We were screening Dream Job, which was a 15-minute short on women working in the ski industry. And you had me do stand-up. And I was so jet lagged. I had not slept on the flight over, and then I got on the train, passed it on the train, and I was thinking to myself, like, Kendal, it's this quaint little town in England. Yeah. And I walk in, and it's like 1,000 people. It was the biggest audience I'd ever done stand-up for at that point, and I was like, what? I could barely form sentences.
Staring a sea of faces on a very big stage as well, intermingled with film and all the rest. But it went down a treat, and obviously I've been following your progress ever since. We've had a few exchanges on email and socials, but it's been a real pleasure to see your ascendancy and growth and popularity grow. And we knew it was coming. You're obviously an incredible talent. You call yourself sort of comedian, actor, director, and pro leisure athlete. But really, I was just saying the other week, we need more comedy, we need more joy in the world. The theme this year at the festival is joy. And perfectly, Week Layers, your new film, landed on our inbox, and everybody watched it in the office and absolutely loved it. So we're delighted that you're coming to talk about it. But how did this happen then? Because this is layering up the whole level of production with actors. You're obviously star role in it, but how on earth did you get that off the ground? Because it's huge, isn't it?
It's huge. It's a dream come true, really. So the producers, Jared Drake and Steven Seig and Marco Galuski, are based out of Tahoe. And they're sort of Silicon Valley and LA expats to the Tahoe basin. And actually, I don't know if it's a basin, area. Let's say area, just because the geography people will actually come for me. But they saw Dream Job. And they reached out in February of 2020 when we were shooting Coach, which screened at Kendal in 2021. Yeah. And I had a conversation with them over, I was drinking Aperol Spritzes and Fieberbrunn, working on the Freeride World Tour. And they had seen Dream Job and said, do you want to make a feature? We want to resurrect the ski comedy genre or subgenre. And I was like, hell yeah. And at that time, I didn't have a screenplay or an outline, but in my head, it was going to happen. And they were like, okay, great. Well, if you have anything that you can send us or show us, I was like, you bet. You betcha. And I just started working on an outline.
Yeah.
And then March hit. We got shut down with COVID. Coach was a disaster as a result, the film we were working on. And I got home to Vancouver and just started working on the outline of Week Layers and went into the writing process in April, really, of 2020. And it took a proper year to get the first draft to them. Mm-hmm. I have like some training in screenwriting. I went to UCLA and I did a semester and a half, and then we got financed for Dream Job, and I came home to shoot that because I figured it was like, a better use of my time in terms of like learning how to make films. And I got the first draft to them in February of 2021. And they loved it. Like they saw the humor, they loved the characters, they loved the world I had built, but they could tell that I wasn't a professional screenwriter.
Right.
And from a structure standpoint, from a formatting standpoint, from all those pieces, and I was just like, well, I learned a British word last night called, I was blagging.
Blagging, winging it even.
Yeah. I was just like, oh yeah, I can write a script. How hard could it be? And so when they read it, they were like, okay, well, we need to connect you to a professional screenwriter, one of whom we have worked with a lot, Andrew Ladd, and then he and I turned out.
Andrew Ladd, as in from the Ladd. Isn't that a famous name in the US?
No, he's done a ton of screenwriting.
Okay.
As both like a ghostwriter and on his own, and then but he had worked with Realization Films on a handful of projects already, and so when they connected me to Andrew, everything changed.
Right.
Because his experience and like professional knowledge and sensibility for story and structure, and also mind for budget, allowed us to take that sort of haywire first draft that I had written and turn it into a proper screenplay. And we turned that out really quickly. That was done by May.
Really?
Yeah, end of May, early June, was like V2, if you will. And then we were hoping to shoot that fall. And then Omicron, or whatever the hell that strain was, it shut us down, or it postponed us. Yeah. So then we were hoping to shoot that following winter. And as we got closer and we sort of like just recognizing the things that were, how big of a project it really was, we were ready. And that was heartbreaking because I was just dying to get this thing going. And then we finally went to camera in the fall of 2022.
It's so hard being behind the scenes and screenwriting and you know, we haven't even touched on fundraising for this yet. But actually then being the protagonist in the film and having to sort of take away those stresses and actually be your persona on camera. I mean, how on earth did you switch from that sort of stress level, if you like, this cloud of stress that must have been there? How did you fund that? How did you deal with the stress, and how did you suddenly switch into delivery mode? Was there, again, a good team of people around you to help you fish for the money and all the rest of it?
The financing was already in place when Jared and Sig reached out to me, because Mark is a sort of self-made investor, and he invests in a range of different things. And one of the things that he's currently interested in is film, at sort of an indie level. And so the financing was all already in place, which was a godsend. And then I didn't have to do a ton there. There was a sort of ask that I go out to some brands that I have relationships with for things like wardrobe, additional financing, connections to things. You know, Ski-Doo got us a couple of sleds for a scene, and Arc'teryx provided a lot of wardrobe. Yeah. And Rocky Talkie provided radios for us to have on set and things like that. And those were some of my, like, just my small profile in the outdoor industry and those connections. Like, having worked with those people, I was able to get those things onto the production, or tagged onto the production. But as far as, you know, producing the thing went, which was a huge stress, the team around me was incredibly supportive, and they really sheltered me from a lot of what was going on so that I could really just focus on the creative, which at times I felt guilty about. But in the end, I'm so grateful for it, because I was able to focus, and I had 2 huge jobs on set, you know, playing the lead and also directing. Yeah. Which retrospectively I will not do again. You know, like, that's a decision of the naive. You know, that's a first timer decision. But talking with the producers just a couple of weeks ago, they're like, how like, would you do anything differently? And I was like, yeah, that was one too many jobs. And they were like, but you had to do it. You had to do it. It was your story, or like your vision, you know? So on set, I had, you know, once I was in performance mode, Colleen would be on monitor. Colleen Gentleman, my longtime collaborator, she would be on monitor, and she would be cueing like actions and cuts. And after almost every take, I would make eye contact with either her or Andrew or Jared and just be like, "Are we getting it?" And then there was also just the feeling, and I had some of the actors that were on there. I will say, Evan Jonikite in particular, who was my co-star. Yep. Doing scenes with him, with Neil Bledsoe, with Jaden Wong and Chelsea Conray, like, all of them are so strong and such good actors that it allowed me to just level up and play
to grow into the role.
Yes, and play with them, and you had a feeling if it was working, and you had a feeling when it wasn't as well.
Yeah. So how did you build the cast? Did you have anybody in mind pre-shooting who you would want to work with, or was that again a sort of an external influence on the decision making?
I had some idea of who would be dream cast, sort of, and then we had a casting director, Brooklyn-based Suzanne Scheel, and she put out, on Actors Access, like the call out for it, and I think 2,000 people auditioned for the male heartthrob character, the pro skier, most famous pro skier in the world, are sent in tapes, and then there was a slightly smaller number for it was what's that expression, the curse of the riches, or I don't know what.
Yeah, I think so.
It was just incredible how many talented, perfect for the role people there were. We did a huge round of callbacks for the two girls characters, and I felt so strongly about both of the girls that we picked based off of their auditions. And in the callback rounds with them, it was just so obvious. And then Neil, who played our villain, if you will, he gave, it was his audition was hysterical. And then Evan was this incredibly lucky bounce. We had a first choice based off an audition who we had taken an offer out to, who didn't realize it was an indie. And so when the budgeting and whatever came together, it was just not enough money for him. And Suzanne said to me, pick someone from your Hail Mary dream list and we'll send him an offer over the weekend. And if he says no, we'll go back to these 2,000 tapes and start again. And I was like, Evan Jonikite.
Yeah.
And he read it over the weekend, watched some of my content, and was in by Monday.
Wow.
And it was just he was so perfect.
So with the cast and crew, what sort of numbers are we looking at? People that you've probably never worked with that size team before.
No. And it was one of the best parts about the entire process for me. Honestly, Colleen and I have done so much with a team of 4 for years, and just crewing up when we have bigger jobs and having I think all in our crew is 25. And having a team around you like that, it's just the efficiencies and the joy every day and the friendships you develop and the just laughs and then just the workflow is so much better. And they say film sets are the closest to the military, in terms of you do your specific job and you run it up the chain of command and blah, 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 blah. But it was being in the position of directing, it was just questions all day. Decision. And I was so impressed with the team, and I came into that job just as straightforward as I possibly could. I'm not gonna pretend I know more than anyone here on set, and the reason you're all hired is because you know more than me, and I want you to feel if you're seeing something, you can bring it to me. I'm not gonna pretend for 1 second I know what's best all the time. And I feel I had so much support from the team, and the decisions were easier as a result because I could really trust the people around me to just look at them and be this feels like something I want to bounce off Ryan DeFranco, our DP, or this feels like something I want to bounce off Matijas, our gaffer, or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think it's probably a good point for us to give the viewer some insight into the storyline, if you like, the premise of Weak Layers, and it is incredible. It's a rom-com, but on steroids. I mean, there's some pretty wild scenes in there, I've got to say. But those of us like the two of us who've done many winter seasons, instantly can see and resonate with those experiences, and those pretty wild parties and the evenings in the bars and everything else. But where did the title Weak Layers come from? Because that's obviously there's a double meaning for skiers off piste with that one as well, backcountry skiers with layers. But what was the rationale behind the title, and then how did you sort of build that story as it from a season? Because you tell us anyway, you're an aspiring filmmaker, aren't you? But you want to get into the big world, into the bright lights.
Exactly. So Weak Layers was a double entendre, a joke about the layers in the snowpack and the weaknesses, wherein if there's enough load applied to it, that's where it breaks and
exactly
creates the avalanche. And
Yeah.
It was a similar joke. It was a similar sort of, or as a metaphor for sort of those layers in our lives, our insecurities, our doubts, our personality flaws. And then when load or pressure is applied to those things, wherein we crack and break. And it's sort of an egoic metaphor, or a limiting self-beliefs metaphor, or social structure metaphor, that I thought was sort of clever. And went with it.
Yeah, some of the scenes are like this sort of tableau that you need a widescreen to see everything that's going on. You know, there's comedy happening in the corner, there's comedy happening in your eye, there's chaos behind it, there's, you know, in a way you need to watch it a few times to actually absorb all that complexity that's going on. And I was thinking to myself, I have to haven't watched it, you know, and I was like, God, that must have been a nightmare to get right on camera. Yeah. Is that right? You must have had so much fun doing it, but God, you must have had some difficult processes to go right. That's in the can, as it were.
I will tell you, the house party scene wherein we ski through a house and destroy a house was that was a challenge.
Was this in Tahoe?
This was in Tahoe.
Yeah.
And Sig, one of our producers, knew a contractor who was in the middle of a full gut of a house, and he reached out to him and asked what it would look like if we were to pull off this scene in the house in the middle of the renovation. The contractor asked the owners. They said sure. They laid down a bunch of whatever to protect it from the snow that we brought in to create jumps in the house. And then after we skied through this house and crashed through a fake glass window and did all this sort of chaos in it, the contractors came back in the next week and they just started ripping up floors and putting the proper windows in and taking down walls. So we just trashed the house before it was actually like fully ripped apart.
I mean, this SH something T does happen though, doesn't it? In the winter seasons, it does go down.
Oh my God! Like the story of these 3 girls being evicted from their rental house in a ski town and then having to live in a van owned by one of their my character's ex-boyfriend. Who has been in the closet because he lives in a ski town and he doesn't feel like there's a space for him. And there's so many sort of things going on, and they're all kind of real. You know, within ski town life and culture. And that was actually something that I felt really strongly about. Was I wanted there to be enough like inside baseball for core skiers and snowboarders to feel like it came from the industry versus Hollywood made a movie about skiing and snowboarding, and then we're supposed to be like, it's okay that they're carrying their skis wrong or what, you know what I mean? Like I was so militant about making sure that it felt like it was so real that core skiers would not be taken out of the story at any time because it was. Yeah,
and we mustn't forget there's some amazing skiing going on in the film.
Yeah, we had an incredible second unit. Our second unit was Scott Gaffney and Tom Day and JT Holmes. Like these are legends in and of themselves. And Scott Gaffney has filmed for MSP for 20 years, and Tom Day has been with Warren Miller since the very beginning. So they were shooting all the second unit, and we had second unit operating at the same time as principal because we were working on such a limited budget and time.
Were the ski shots done back in Whistler or?
No, it was all in Tahoe, all within the same 23 filming days.
Wow.
Over the course of 6 weeks, but 23 days of actual filming.
So has this been a bit life-changing? I mean, how has it been taken in Canada and the US? And I've read recently that I think they've bought the film, have they? So the channel? Or?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've just jumped into the river, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the first screening of it at Banff Film Festival, and we had 2 sold out screenings, and
amazing. People
were having so much fun watching it, and we got so much great feedback. And after 3 years of head down focus on it, I just can't express to you how good it feels to watch it with audiences.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, I was in LA for 4 months working with my editor, Anna Rotke. I was in Tahoe for 3 months, you know, all in. It's just been a massive process. And then post-production, we've been dealing with putting out fires right up until 2 weeks before it went to the screen, and watching it with the crowds on Friday and Sunday in Banff was just the most exciting and gratifying experience. And this will be the second festival that it's screened at here in Kendal. And then we go to Whistler Film Fest. And then on January 5th, it goes to theaters across the US and Canada. And that
amazing.
is via our distribution company, Greenwich, who they also distributed Free Solo.
Yes. Yeah.
And they got a hold of Weak Layers, and they are the reason that we're going to be in theaters. And having a theatrical release on my first feature is insane.
It's a dream.
It's a
dream
dream
job. Yeah.
It's a yeah.
Yeah. Excuse the tie in there. I mean, is this the launch pad to a new life, do you think? Is this gonna take you into, I guess you just need a period of breathing out and taking stock, do you, before anything else happens? Are you gonna see what happens? Is it a case of, call me?
There's already been an agent that's reached out, and I have management in Vancouver, but I don't have US representation. And we had someone reached out and are interested in conversation, and Evan, my co-star, and we wrote another screenplay. And my dream has always been to work in Hollywood. That's always been the end game for me. And everything I've done up until this film has been to get me there, and continues to be the goal. And I just it's such an insane job in some ways to allow your career to be dictated by audiences, but it's actually always been about audiences for me. And
whether it's on Instagram to YouTube to big screen production.
And so just for me, it's just having another opportunity to entertain an audience again is like how I have to kind of stay focused on it, because if you kind of get too big picture, you can kind of run yourself out or spiral, or I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough, or you get too big for your britches, like kind of how you see yourself. So I just try to stay really focused on like, it's about entertainment, it's about the next opportunity to entertain. It's not about me, it's about the audience. Like I'm a channel for, you know what I mean? That's how I kind of, but I hope so. I just love doing it so much.
It seems to me you're doing it the right way. You're making the quality's there, people are going to come to you, and that's the right way, rather than screaming, come get me. It's like, it's there for the taking. And I just wish you all the very best with it. I can say, you've got a huge fan base growing here in the UK already, obviously since 2019, but
that's so
I'm
cool.
so pleased you still hold Kendal close to your heart. And when you're a Hollywood star, you're going to come back and sit in these little sheds of ours in Kendal, and we'll go out and party together as always.
Well, Kendal has a very special place in my heart. You gave us such a platform with Dream Job, and made us feel so seen, and I love this festival.
You're so very welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks, Katie Burrell. Thank you.
Handshake. Thanks,
Very British. Very British.
So sweet.
No, nice put.
Thank you.